I want to welcome everybody to Mental Health Monday today, December 29th, 2025. Our topic is neurodiversity, the lived experience. We have three panel members. We're going to learn from them um, and have some discussion around this. I would like to introduce first Vashti Raymond. Vashti is a certified peer support specialist whose lived experience includes managing several neurodivergent conditions. She's a community trainer with the Arizona Peer and Family Career Academy and is passionate about educating both members and providers on understanding, destigmatizing, and accommodating neuro minorities. Welcome, Vashti. You want to raise your hand so people know this is you? Okay. Next we have Veronica Welch. Veronica has been working in behavioral health in Northern Arizona for over 27 years, starting at the provider level in 1998, and then transitioned to Northern Arizona Regional Behavioral Health Authority, known as NARBA, in 2007. In her previous role, she worked as a medical systems analyst and acute health plan coordinator. Her current position of Office of Individual and Family Affairs Manager allows her to build partnerships with individuals, families, stakeholders to promote recovery, resiliency, and wellness. This is the OIFA Office of Office of Family and Manager. I'm getting it all tumbled up. Office of Individual and Family Affairs with Arizona Blue Cross Blue Shield Health Choice. NARBA moved all different names, and here we are now with this. This role also allows her to share information on the neurodiverse population, which has opened in an area, I'm sorry, which has opened an area of her life that she is navigating. Veronica, you want to say hello? Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for being here, Veronica. And
Absolutely.
last but certainly not least on the panel, we have Amanda Samsel. Amanda is a certified peer recovery support specialist and peer and parent family support specialist, a peer leader and a provisional state trainer for NAMI's peer-to-peer program, and a facilitator and coordinator for NAMI Southern Arizona's family support groups. She serves as co-chair of the Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness Lived Experience Council, contributing to its prevention and stabilization committees. She also serves on the Arizona Complete Health Member and Family Governance Board and the Access Beneficiary Advisory Council. Amanda strives to elevate lived experience, promoting healing, centered care, and remind others and herself that they are worthy of compassion at every stage of the journey. So I want to thank everyone for being here, thank our panelists. As I mentioned before we started the recording, you're welcome to ask questions or put them in chat. And I think that I'll start with each panelist sharing a little bit about themselves and what their experience is with neurodiversity. And we'll start with Vashti.
Me. So, as said, my name's Vashti. I'm a certified peer support specialist, but for this context, I've been in mental health services for most of my life. I'm technically don't meet the diagnostic criteria for ADHD, but that's only because I also am autistic. And those symptoms kind of cancel each other out in some ways. So I don't meet the diagnostic criteria. I've struggled with anxiety and OCD since I was a child, um, very much because I was undiagnosed autistic. I was only officially diagnosed this year. Um, I also deal with some physical complications of neurodiversity. I have well-managed POTS, the postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which makes it's a technically a heart condition, but it's mostly a brain condition. It's caused by basically an overactive fear response in my case. as well as joint hypermobility syndrome, which my joints are wibbly wobbly. They don't like to stay where they're supposed to be. I have a relatively mild case, but you'll see a lot of people with neurodiversity who are wearing joint splints all the time, and they wake up every morning and their ribs are out of place and they have to put them back every day. Um,
Vashti, would you put your hand up and show us what you're talking about? And you had mentioned to me that this isn't covered through insurance.
so I wear hand splints. This is to support this joint here and then to support these two. I could wear them on every finger, but I'm left hand dominant. These are the most important. They make it so I can actually write for any significant period of time. I had to have these custom made. They're not covered by insurance. And Ehlers-Danlos, which is the more severe term, there's still a lot of debate of joint hypermobility syndrome versus Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility type. Are they the same? Is it a spectrum? All of that. Um, I believe it was only a couple years ago that it was actually like the guidelines were provided for Social Security Administration of how to award disability for it. Up until then, it's been very, very difficult to get support for this condition. Um, there are not a lot of the it's not a super common or well understood condition, and it presents in other ways before doctors figure out that, oh, it's the connective tissue that's the issue. Um, Very much hand in hand with the autism, especially level one autism, of that, like, oh, this presents in a bunch of other ways before you finally like you have to really parse through and be like, oh, this is what's actually going on. Um, I feel like that was more of an introduction than I intended. The last piece about me is I am very much in the throes of neurodivergent burnout. I'm on the other side of the worst of it, but I'm happy to talk about my experience there if anybody's interested in learning more about that.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions right now for Vashti? Okay, and I'll tell you, for me, I'd never heard about the joint issue or seen the hand splints. Thank you for sharing that. So we'll move next to Veronica.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on here. Um, I I love the fact that in the beginning it was shared that there's, so many different levels of this. I think it's really important to understand that. I will tell you that in my particular case, um, based on my age, we won't go into a lot of that. ADHD, autism, those were not really looked at for my generation. They really started looking at that, I want to say, in the 80s. And it was really only for boys. And so one of the things I wanted to share is the difficulty of being diagnosed at an older age for numerous reasons. They want school records, they want information from people who have known you like your whole life. Um, and for someone like me, I've lost all my family members. And so there was nothing to provide them the information. So really it was me researching and working with doctors and explaining things. Um, Another thing in ADHD, it is different for everyone, of course. But they used to have ADD and ADHD. Um, but really, there is no real difference other than one of them has a physical hyperactivity. So when you see people, can't sit still, they're tapping, doing all the things. And then there's the hyperactivity in the brain. And I can tell you I have that. It is nonstop. I laugh ironically, because the last few years, the videos that have come out about people sharing, like, you go to sleep and you just sleep? Like, really? How does that work? Like, I'm blown away. Like, people don't actually go to bed thinking about everything all day long through the brain, never stopping. Um, so that was interesting to me. Another thing that I've had since childhood was textures. I cannot stand balloons, touching tinfoil, seams, tags, um, so many things that people just called me kind of weird and quirky. And, it wasn't until I really started. Oh, I'm sorry, someone's not on mute. It wasn't until I really started like researching this and trying to understand. Um, and I have to tell you, it was so freeing. Okay. I was 49 years old um, when it all came to light. And all of the sudden, I felt okay. Like I felt that I didn't have to explain everything to everyone. And I could speak up for myself. I'll give you a couple examples. So during COVID, everyone wanted to be on camera, right? We did a lot of Zoom meetings and Teams meetings and things like that. And a lot of times, like within companies, they're like, you have to be on camera. And for me, yeah, no. And I'll explain why. It wasn't because I didn't want people to see me. It's because I kept staring at myself and wondering, is my facial expression okay? Am I rolling my eyes? Do I look mad? And so I would miss almost everything in the meeting. And so I actually emailed our HR director at our health plan um, and my CEO's supervisor through Blue Cross Blue Shield, and I just let them know um, this this is my situation. I can guarantee you there's other employees that have this, but I can only speak for myself. And it's really important if you're going to accept diversity and promote it and acknowledge it that you have to like take the whole package. Um, for someone like me, because I work in the Office of Individual and Family Affairs, we have to have lived experience, either for ourselves or a direct family member, to even get this job. So disclosing that information kind of makes you vulnerable, right? And because of that, I figured if my job made me vulnerable, I'm going to speak up for myself to help with that vulnerability. And we also, I have to say, I'm very excited. I was one of the founding members of our affinity group for the well, it's multiple conditions, mainly because people came out and said, based on their experience, where they wanted these groups to go. And so I shared normally I wear a baseball cap, like even in work meetings, because that's a security thing for me. Um, there's just, yes, headphones, absolutely. There's a real beauty in neurodiversity that a lot of people don't know about, and I'm hoping that you see that and that you find that during presentations like this. Um, I You can take I guess tests or questionnaires, and it was really interesting. One of the first ones I took, it was, I don't know, like 200 questions or something. And it compares like atypical and typical. And it was so funny to me because I was 98% atypical and it all made perfect sense to me. Like I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm fine with it. Like again, it empowered me. It allowed me um, to really embrace who I was. Um, Regarding the burnout, I think it's different for everyone, but for me, especially in my age group, I spent my entire life trying to present myself as I thought people wanted me to present myself. Um, I do pick up on social cues, but I'm finding that as I'm getting older, it's a little harder for me to pick up on some of those social cues. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that I've been doing it for so long. I'm 51 years old and I'm tired. Like, I have no other way to explain it. My ability to mask, as they would say, is almost non-existent now. And I don't want to share, I know I'm talking too much, but it's just so important for people to be, I guess, aware of themselves, and that we're not wrong. We're just different. And a little tidbit of information, most of us, like if we're watching a TV show or a movie, we already know what's going to happen even before it does. Because we are thinking so far ahead, like I can come up with the plot way early and people are like, you've seen it before. I'm like, no, I just know, and I can't explain it, but I just know. So that's a lot of information. Thank you for letting me share. I look forward to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also. Vashi, you have your hand up?
Since it's related to what Veronica just shared, I'm going to share a link in the chat. This is one of my favorite places to look at neurodiversity assessments. Not only do they have it really easily set up, they also have a little section talking about the pros and cons of each assessment, when it was created, what are the potential places that neurodivergent people might get hung up on it. Because I swear, nothing makes me look quite as autistic as when I go through and try and take the RAD, which is one of the primary autism assessments that was used in the 90s. It's bad. So it's just a really helpful resource. Their blog is amazing as well.
Thank you for putting that in the chat. And I like the name Embrace Autism. So you're saying that they have assessments that I could do my own assessment to see if I felt I fit in somewhere.
Yep. And they have several of the ADHD, several of the autism assessments. They also have an OCD sensory assessment. They also have the masking assessment, which is one of the ones that it's not clinically used very often, but it's a very helpful one to bring to your providers. Of like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm masking, but I know I'm masking. I know I'm different and I'm trying to hide it.
And it's almost debilitating trying to hide it all the time. And I know we have one more speaker. I'll look up the link, but another helpful one for me was the ASPE quiz. And it
That one's
really
on there.
breaks down like it breaks it down for you. And it was just a beautiful thing for me because I was like, oh, that's what I don't, and I tell people I don't people well. And if I do people, it takes me like 3 days like to relax. So even for something like this, the next couple of days I'm going to feel a little bit depleted. So thank you for putting that in there too, Ashti.
Thank you. Yeah, resources are really helpful and appreciated. So next, let's hear from Amanda.
Hi, everybody. Just a little background on myself. My experience with neurodiversity is I was late in life diagnosed, as in like this past year. I've always struggled with many things. I was born hearing impaired, and they didn't find out until I was 6. A lot of my issues stem from that early development being missed opportunity. My parents, they didn't treat me like I had a disability of any kind. They just treated me like my brother, and that was good because I didn't feel different, like, you know. And but it also made it harder because they saw what they wanted to see and not this fact that I was struggling. And that was hard because I would struggle with taking notes and doing various tasks at school because it takes me so much longer to do things than everybody else. Um, my diagnosis was neurodiverse other, which for me, that's kind of weird because I get my own category according to the neuropsychologist. Um, she said, you qualify for your own category. Like, great, thanks. What does that mean? So, like, I mean, just learning everything that I can about, what's going on with me has helped me tremendously with like coming to terms with a lot of things from my childhood and from early adulthood and even up until, recently. I used to beat myself up so much because I simple tasks that or tasks that seem like they should be simple and easy to do and quick to do sometimes for me just take so much longer. And I hated myself for a long time because I thought I was broken and a failure and not like what was wrong with me, you know? And so like doing what I do with peer support and family support, helping other people is a big part of who I am. And I love doing it. But unfortunately, I overdo it sometimes by overextending myself and get burnout fairly quick if I work too much, which I'm finding full time is not a good thing for me. Part time is better. Um, because I put my whole heart into what I do and I do what I can to help people. And like Vashti was saying with the joints, I can't remember what you called it, but I have that also. I'm used to say I was double jointed in all my joints because they would all hyperextend, and my knees do it the most. But I also now have carpal tunnel and tarsal tunnel, which is in your feet, the tarsal tunnel. Um, and it's actually kind of getting bad in my hands, which worries me because typing is, something I do on a regular enough basis that like worry about it. But there are workarounds that I'm working on accessibility stuff, which is also a very important thing. Knowing what accessibility things I need to ask for has been a relief because I knew that I needed something accessibility wise with work, but I didn't know what until now. And like knowing that was very empowering. And when I first got the ADHD diagnosis, it was about a year and a half ago. And I was dumbfounded the fact that I didn't see it because like all the markers were there and it just completely didn't went over my head, I guess. And when I told my mom and my best friend that I had known since I was 9 years old that I had ADHD, they're like, "We thought you knew." So like, always lets us know on certain things. But it there are a lot of executive function things that I have difficulty with that I have been working on for years. And masking is something that I've done for years. I don't do it as nearly as much now because like I'm just grown tired of it. And it's very frustrating to not be able to be myself in front of people. And so I just don't do that anymore. It's not worth the trauma it causes. I look forward to answering any questions you guys have.
Any questions for Amanda specifically at this point? So what I'm hearing from all three of you is that you were diagnosed later in life and navigated through life with the experience and not necessarily understanding. What a huge challenge. Anyone care to comment?
So when I first started learning about all of this, I'm still working on chewing through. It's a book called Unmasking Autism by Devin Price. It's a lived experience account and deep dive into all of this. But in her introduction, his introduction, excuse me, I didn't learn until later that trans. um, I there's a line of that talking about how the behavioral health system is designed to harm people with autism. And the first time I read that, I was a little taken aback. Of like, it can't, no, that can't be right. And while I do think it can be an exaggeration in some cases, for people like me, I see why it would be described that way. Because I was in services almost my whole life. And granted, I wasn't technically diagnosable as autistic until the DSM-5, which I would have been out of high school at that point, but still, I was still in services. And if anything, sorry, Kitty, um, if anything, a lot of that taught me to mask up further. It taught me that the way I interpreted the world was wrong. That there, that I was, socially inept, which I mean, to some extent I am, but I don't judge myself for it anymore. I don't expect myself to be capable of those things, whereas it was often seen as a deficit rather than a difference. And, even when I started to understand, the care providers I worked with at those times still were like, no, I don't think you're autistic. I had to find people who were willing to explore it with me. They don't, it's not all of them. It's getting better. But in a lot of cases, it's that, and we do this in all areas of medicine of what is the symptom, treat the symptom versus is there a deeper cause? There are so many women out there who've been told they're anxious and they're just anxious and they're oversensitive and they're just you just need to be less sensitive. When it's like I'm anxious because I can't stop feeling everything touching me. I'm anxious because I am trying so hard to be the person everyone around needs me to be when it's not something that comes naturally to me. When I'm trying so hard to, just be good, be be likable, be not offend anybody, not hurt anybody's feelings on accident. That was really the first step of unmasking for me, was realizing that I do so well socially because I put myself last, if at all. And I figured that out when I was probably 27, 28. I'd been doing it for over a quarter of a century, and none of my providers caught it because I was doing it with them too. And, like we've heard, like Veronica and Amanda said, it gets to a point where you just can't keep it up. Eventually, even if you're doing okay for a while, and I love working with the younger clients and getting to have these conversations that like, yeah, it's working now. But even if you can keep this up for the next 10 years, you're eventually going to hit a wall. And eventually, when you hit that wall, it's going to affect all areas of your life. It's going to affect your ability to stay employed. It's going to affect your relationships, with your family, with your spouse, with your kids. It's and like you can't teach you can't stop someone from like continuing to push themselves into that wall. And a lot of times people don't have a choice based on their life circumstances. But if possible, start breaking this down earlier so you don't have to do it all at once.
I
Thank
have a general question, I think, for all three of you. Um, I'm I see that you were diagnosed later in life. So what kind of school life did you have?
I'll share. I honestly did very well in school, mainly because I I have to say masking in that realm probably helped me because the teachers wanted you to do your work and do it right, so we did. I did. Um, I will say that almost every single report card and or teachers writing in yearbooks or whatever that I talked a lot and that I I was almost like a class clown. And I really believe that that was because I truly did not know how to act. And if you're masking for a teacher, then your fellow students are like, what's wrong with you? And if you're masking for your fellow students, the teacher's like, hey, you need to focus. So it was a constant balance act. Um, and I think that follows you later in life when you're at work and doing all the same things. And I completely agree with my other presenters that you get to a point you just can't anymore. And for you, it's almost a relief, like, okay, I'm allowing myself to breathe right now. But for the people around you, including in school or your family, they're looking at you like, what is wrong with you? This is coming out of nowhere. And you're like, oh no, no, no. This has been a long time coming. Um, so that was my experience.
Thank you for sharing. I can just only imagine the challenge.
Mhm.
Vashti, Amanda, would you like to comment on that? And then we'll go to the other questions. People have hands up.
Yeah. For me, I was socially awkward and didn't have a whole lot of friends. And the friends I did have, um, are people that I still talk to. But I kept to myself. I did my work and I went home. I didn't go out and party or do anything else like that. I did my work, and there are areas that I did very well in, and then there are areas that I struggled and failed and got C's and D's in. And those would be my math and science and things like that. And it's not because I wasn't smart and didn't know the stuff. It's because I was struggling to learn it, because with the hearing loss and all the other stuff along with it, it just, and I didn't know how to ask for help because I was struggling with my notes, because trying to watch someone's mouth as they're teaching and watch the board and watch everything else and trying to write at the same time, it's exhausting. And I didn't do very well. My notes had 1 or 2 words on them, and that was it. And all I kept thinking was, what is wrong with you? Why can't you do this right? Why can't you write them like everybody else is doing? And I was so hard on myself all the time. And it just sucked. Like, being honest, it sucked. How about you, Vashti?
At school was and is hard. I made it a little more than halfway through a university degree before I just couldn't do it anymore. Um, as as a grade schooler, I did have a 504 plan. We also caught in seventh grade. Another thing on my list of things that my eyes don't cooperate properly. It's something that you see vision disorders, hearing disorders very commonly with neurodiversity. Um, Basically, my eyes, I'm left-handed, right-eyed, which presents challenges to begin with because our writing system is designed for people who have the same. So I'd had all these little self-accommodations I'd figured out there, but it takes me a little longer. Um, I so my left eye will just quit on me sometimes. And before we knew that was happening, before we'd done strength training with my eyes, basically what would happen is I'm trying to read, my eye turns out, I get it back in line, but then I have to backtrack. So I was a really slow reader, but by the time I finished the textbook or the chapter, I'd basically read it 3 times. So that resulted in like I tested really well, but I was always behind on my homework. I was always struggling to keep up with coursework, keep up in class. And that really confused a lot of my teachers that, especially before we figured out more of what was going on, there was a lot of pushback of like, oh no, she's just lazy. She just doesn't want to read. She just doesn't want to actually engage with classwork, which was very much not the case. I was such a people pleaser and it was destroying me inside that I couldn't meet the expectations of my authority figures. Um, Socially, everything got better in high school. Um, Funnily enough, though, all of the friends I've kept from high school also suspect they're autistic. We didn't do it on purpose. Um, and I'm very happy for the majority of them that they're not in a place that they feel the need to seek a diagnosis. I think that's something that I expected to come up today, so I'll just go into it. If you're an adult and you're not sure, because I've heard this a lot, especially from people in their 20s, of like, what would it even do for me? Why should I go seek an autism diagnosis? Um, my big encouragement would be one, especially if you have any concerns, if there are persisting issues with anxiety and depression, um, you need to go get a metabolic panel done. And that's a lot easier to encourage your doctors to do once you have the autism diagnosis in place. For me personally, I have a gene mutation. It's called the MTHFR mutation. That's an issue with processing folate. It results in issues with sleep, issues with anxiety and depression. Um, and it's fixed by taking a supplement. It's a really easy fix. The other more recent discovery that led to, severe issues with burnout and really, really contributed to me crashing out last year, It was apparently I have an issue with processing copper. I was dealing with the beginnings of copper toxicity, um, which led to a manic episode. I highly don't recommend it. Um, Also, it was news to me when I got diagnosed that I'm still eligible as an adult to explore speech therapy and get support there, which I haven't been able to yet, but I'm very much looking forward to it. It's not, there are services available for adults that not just generalized support services and um, but further, like, the diagnostician was like, yeah, I think we could actually see you could have some improvement in social skills and those social interactions with this. And I was like, really? That's a possibility. I'm down to give it a shot. I see a question in the chat. How do you get diagnosed as an adult? Um, One, as Veronica was saying, there's gathering of documentation. You do need to have evidence from childhood that you were experiencing this, that all of this didn't start later in life. Um, that being said, it's going to depend on your insurance. Some places you can self-refer, others you're going to need a referral from your case manager, from your pediatrician, primary care physician, um, or a psychiatrist in order to get the process rolling. The main places I know of that do adult diagnoses are Arizona Autism United, Access for Autism, and um, going through vocational rehab. If
Thank you.
anybody else knows
Thanks
others,
for
please
sharing.
let
That's
me
great.
know.
And if you would want to just type those into the chat so people can make note of that, that would be helpful. George, you've had your hand up. Thank you for being patient.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Lori. Thanks to the panel. So I have a couple of decades more life experience than even Veronica. So you're young, Veronica, and uh, I can't, so I'll just go there. Rather than self-diagnosis or looking for a diagnosis, as I am introspective about the golden years, so to speak, when I was most productive for society, I was doing medical research, very high tech, developing new sensors. We were measuring blood in people's hearts right after they had a heart attack. So, very high tech. But the engineers who managed me just did not get it. And I remember having the annual review where I did fine, I met the goals. But then they take you out to dinner and just yell at you for how you are as a person.
Hmm.
Okay. I was in San Antonio, Texas, doing cardiac research at what's called Burke Army Medical Center. It's where the Army trains their doctors. So we were with the cardiologist doing very high tech stuff. And then at night, having dinner on the Riverwalk, they just said, well, this is what you do that's wrong. This is what you do that's wrong. This is how you are. And that um, goes back to childhood and high school and parenting. And so it was only recently that it dawned on me, well, my hyper emotions, where I feel they're very strong, it's not just it's a physical um, emotion. And being bright. Anyway, so what I wanted to share with everyone was as I am learning, I just got this book called Navigating Adult Autism by Dr. Bailey, S.J. Bailey. So I'm learning, but I'm also learning not to give credence to those remembrance. What's that? Oh, I just missed the chat. Sorry. But I wanted to, I'll go and read it. I just wanted to share that I would have done much better had they known more back in the 70s and 80s. That I just grew up before the widespread knowledge. And I'll close by saying that as Vashti and Veronica and Amanda have spoken, I've heard all these various experiences with which I have experienced myself. So thank you all very much for your time today. Thank you.
And thank you, George, for sharing. I think that this is so relatable. And the knowledge and awareness as it increases, more people identify with this. Libby, you have had your hand up. Thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Thank you. I want to thank all the panelists. First of all, it is so refreshing to come into a room with people like me and hear you talk so honestly about our experiences. Um, I'm 65 years old, and I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism, ADHD. Um, and in my late 40s when one of my children was undergoing evaluation for the same thing. And I think you're going to hear, if you speak to a lot of parents of kids who have diagnoses, that that's when we got our diagnoses, if we had really great clinicians who were investigating the family background as well. Um, I'll tell you something. I've been in behavioral health treatment since I was 8 years old. I've had over a dozen behavioral health diagnoses, including 3 different personality disorder diagnoses. Um, the first book I picked up when I got my diagnosis was a book called Lazy, Crazy, and Stupid, because that's how I felt all my life. People told me I was lazy, I was crazy, or I was stupid. But though I did really well in school, they took the stupid off, so I was just lazy or crazy. The masking is traumatic and affects every area of your life. So Vashti, having come through the other side of autistic burnout, I would love to hear what helped you. Thank you very much for sharing.
So again, I'm still in the middle of it. Um, I think so. All right. I'm gonna start a little before I hit the bottom. So I was working my first ever full-time job, and I was loving it. I was getting to work as a peer support specialist primarily with 18 to 25-year-olds. I had some older clients too, but was mostly with young people. And I was getting to be the person I didn't have when I was 20. And the working with the people was the easiest part of the job. You know, it's kind of like being in this space where I know I can talk honestly. And then I got out of my appointment with my client and I had to go back into the rest of the office. And I was struggling with almost every aspect. And I went into it without a plan of what is the point where I need to let this go? What is the point where this is too much? Because I went in assuming that, like, of course, there's going to be an acclimation period. Of course, it's going to be sensory overwhelm. I'm going to have some meltdowns and it's going to be okay, right? I'll acclimate, right? I didn't. And it kept getting worse. Um, I had my first big chronic pain flare up that kept me home from work. And that was the moment that I was like, all right, this is my last chance to exit gracefully. And I gave him my notice And I was pressured to reduce from a 2-week notice to a 1-week notice. And me being me, I still tried to get 2 weeks of work done. I barely slept that week, and I'm pretty sure I was hypomanic the whole week. And I was manic my last day. Um, I was manic for 4 days total. And I'm very, very grateful for the people around me that I was only manic for 4 days. Um, I had someone I could call, just even being manic, that I was like, all right, you're a mandated reporter, but you're not my mandated reporter, and you'll break me out of here if I don't want to be here, right? And they were able to work me through, get me to, I didn't end up inpatient, but they were, we went to the hospital, we got me checked out. And as soon as he was like, you're manic, I was like, oh, and I was able to get myself down from it. Um, Beyond that, though, it's been slow going. It's a lot of patience with myself, patience with the healing process, and there's a lot of trauma work because being manic was, kind of like doing 20 years of therapy in 2 days. I don't recommend it. It was a lot of putting information together, really realizing the effect that a lot of that, that childhood masking up, and realizing, frustratingly, based on how my exit at work went, based on, seeing how the system treated several of my clients, that like it's hard not to get angry. It's hard. And honestly, no, I do get angry. It's hard to manage that anger and keep it where it's useful. Keep it in the place of, I want to be here. I want to be helping people. I want to be advocating, because so many of us have been through hell and back trying to get the support we need. And there are a hell of a lot of us who didn't make it this far. Almost all of us have lost people like-minded, like struggle with similar struggles, who couldn't take it. And rather than get into the frustrations of all of that, and the anger and the grief, I prefer to show up to things like this. I prefer to show up to Mental Health Day at the Capitol. I prefer to work with PSCA and keep doing trainings and building things for them to use to maintain this advocacy, because neurodiversity is so, so common in the recovery community. And it's heartbreaking to see people who've been in the recovery space for how long, still beating themselves up for really, really normal neurodivergent behaviors.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really heartfelt. And I think that you point out the importance of support and having a support system, and that there are challenges inherent in the system providing services as well. So Veronica, you wanted to comment on this, and then we'll go to Hans.
Oh, yeah, I regarding the burnout. So for me, I'll be really, really honest. The first things to go for me are hygiene and nutrition. I just can't do it. I literally cannot do it. And um don't want to overshare, but there's many days I can't even brush my hair. And what this has caused for me is I am actively looking into disability right now. And the reason for that is because I'm genuinely afraid that if I keep going like this, I'm just not going to make it out the other side. And if actually it's interesting that you brought up the gene mutation because they're actually um, testing me for something similar. And I'll try to be quick on this, but recently I experienced a really scary situation where I was in the hospital and they ran tests and I came out with rhabdomyolysis. So my muscles start breaking down and it sends that protein and stuff through your blood. And if it gets to your kidneys, it's fatal. And it can happen very quickly within an hour or two. And the cause of that one we thought was my statin for my high cholesterol, which by the way is sky high. And I've had it since grade school. So, they're trying to treat it. But the treatment for the high cholesterol causes rhabdomyolysis. So they took me off the statins and I had another episode of rhabdomyolysis and was in the hospital. And the numbers were terrifying. And so they're testing me for a gene mutation regarding my cholesterol that my body's not able to process um, and pull things into cells. And it's overwhelming. And I don't have a lot of the joint issues, but I can tell you um, my elbows and my knees have always given out. And I am the most klutzy person on the face of the planet. I can fall upstairs like nobody's business. And I I I really don't know why that is. I know it's all connected, but I don't know how many of you walk into corners of walls, like the doors, and the door didn't move. Like how did I walk in and bruise my entire side? So yeah, I'm sharing that because the burnout for me didn't cause all of these things, but it's actually empowering me to advocate for myself more. Um, and so genuinely, I am looking at applying for disability so I can take care of myself and enjoy my life because as Vashti said, I've lost a lot of people in my life who I believe um, experienced similar things. The suicide rate in my family is as high as the cancer rate in my family. And I literally have lost my mom, dad, sister, brother, everything. So it's really important for us to not only understand, um, the difference about us, the beautiful difference, but to allow it, embrace it, and um, advocate for ourselves because we didn't ask for this, we didn't cause it, and honestly, to be truthful, society makes it look wrong, but it's not. And so, yeah, just overshared, but wanted to share. Thank you.
Not oversharing at all, and thank you, because this helps everyone who is here gain insight. There's so much underlying behind what is going on that you're really helping increase awareness. Before we go to Mackenzie, whose hand is up, Amanda, do you want to share anything about neurodiversity burnout with your experience?
Yeah, I am have recently been coming out of it myself. I pushed myself too hard and at a job that I was doing too many things at one time as far as what my role was. And I didn't see the burnout happening until about 2 to 3 months after I'd lost my job. And like it's been hard coming back from that. But there's a good support system is a lot of that. And my anger about my, medical conditions, because I have a huge list of them, along with this neurodiversity, including aneurysm in my aorta. Um, so like dealing with all of the medical crap gets tiring. And so you get to a point where you try to people please and you try to mask and you try to do all the things that you think you should do, whether it's what you actually should be doing or not is irrelevant to you at the time. But you do keep pushing and pushing and pushing until you have nothing left to push yourself to do. And, you know, you sit there and wonder, why can't this be easier? Why isn't this easier? Everybody else seems to be doing this just fine. And why are you struggling? And yeah, we are, Veronica. Um, we take care of ourselves last. And it's not because, we don't care about ourselves. It's because we don't look at it that way. We just try to help the people that we can as much as we can because it's what feels right to us. And just a second, my cat is being unruly right now. I do apologize. Tearing things off the table. Stop it.
I could.
Sorry about that.
I know what you were saying. It is not just human, it is a mammalian need to be accepted by our peers and by our caretakers. Centuries ago, pre-civilization, it's a requirement for survival. So we come into society as it is today, and often pre-memory, we learned that we have to take care of the people around us before we take care of ourselves for the sake of acceptance. And if nobody undoes that and we're left to figure that out on our own, that inner way, that is a trauma response that we've been exhibiting since we were not infants, but very, very young. And that sort of prolonged trauma has devastating health consequences. I've seen at least, parents that are, struggling to manage their own feelings about potentially seeking a diagnosis for their child. And like, yes, your feelings are valid, your fears are valid. You don't want your child stuck with this label for the rest of their lives. But I guarantee you that there will be worse labels if you don't pursue this support for your child. Early diagnosis and treatment can change someone's life. It can completely change the trajectory. And it's absolutely worth it. What I wouldn't give to be able to give myself some of, not even all, but just some of what I know now, to be able to go back and tell myself when I was beating myself up in high school for not being able to meet everyone's expectations that, hey, no, your brain just works a little different and it's okay. And maybe here are some tips and tricks. And like, I don't know if I could have gotten through to my teenager self, but I wish I could at least try because I didn't have anybody who could explain it to me in a way that I could understand.
Thank you for sharing that. Mackenzie, you have your hand up.
Hi, I have a lot of things to comment on and a question, but I just want to generally say thank you for being so brave and vulnerable and sharing this part of you with us. Having met all of you, it's sad to see the challenges that you faced, and I think often about the kids that I went to school with who were very likely on the spectrum and were treated very poorly as weird or different or just very other. And I'm grateful that you've had the opportunity to learn more about yourself and that autism is being discussed more widely. But on that same front, with the current political situation, there's a lot of information being shared about autism that is probably hard for you all to hear. And so I just wanted to know your reactions to what's being said publicly that is maybe not reflective of your situation and potentially damaging.
I'll be really blunt. Most of the things in history that were horrific, heartbreaking, unjust, was based on ignorance. And ignorance is unfortunately empowering to some people. I think more than ever, it's important for all of us to acknowledge all of that, like the day at the Capitol, because history has a way of repeating itself. And if we don't make the change or open people's eyes, then it's one step forward and I want to say 8 million steps back. But yeah.
It's definitely been disheartening, some of the rhetoric going on right now. My biggest advice is listen to your medical practitioners, go to medically, research-based organizations for your information. Beware of the TikTok misinformation vortex. I make an effort. I recognize my privilege. I recognize I'm white and I'm cared for, even though I'm not able to work right now. I have the ability to speak up, and I know my family is able to take care of me, even if I'm not in a place to work to take care of myself. So I'm going to speak up because it is my responsibility as a person with level 1 autism, as a white person, as a straight presenting person, to make space for the people and for the people who are willing to speak and speak as much as advocate as much as possible for the people who aren't able to. Because there was a really interesting account, that same book I mentioned earlier, Unmasking Autism. Like, I'd never considered the dangers of stimming as a Black person. The dangers of wearing headphones to try and manage your sensory oversensitivities in the hood. If you're stimming in public, a cop's going to think you're tweaking. Like, the person actually experiencing that might not be in a position where they feel safe to advocate for themselves. So I'm going to say it. And so far, I've been well received. It's hard. Again, that fear response of the brain of like, I'm ready for it. from yeah, waiting for someone to disagree. And that's something, again, my feelings are my own to manage. I'll deal with that later. Um, but yeah, support lived experience advocates where you can, support research-based organizations, and double check your sources.
Thank you. Amanda, would you like to add to that, or did they cover it?
They covered it pretty well. Something that I've been doing now with what's been going on is definitely the advocating, but getting more involved in the community as far as like with the different boards and other organizations that I'm involved with, trying to help change policies and trying to make it better, the system. Because the only way they're going to be able to fix it is if we actually take a deep hard look at everything and, just be honest about the fact that the system is broken and how do we fix it? Like by listening to the people it affects is the biggest thing. And so, just do the best I can with that and, you know, wake up every day ready to, know, fight, basically.
Thank you. And I know one of the things that we've talked about is assessments and diagnosing and needing school records. This is an area that I think it needs to be revised within our system so that there is a new tool that takes into account who is before them and what the report is. Without the school records, it may not be available. I think a lot of people go undiagnosed because of the archaic system in place or where it needs to be updated. And I hope I didn't cut you off, Amanda. Go ahead if I did. Okay. Michelle, you have your hand up and then we'll go to Jen.
I think Jen's hand was up before mine.
Okay, go ahead, Jen. Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, thanks. Hi, thanks, Lori, for putting this together and for the three panelists. This has been so impactful for me. I don't know if a lot of new faces on this call, so maybe most of you don't know anything about DeNova, but we are integrated healthcare, and which is primary care and counseling and psychiatry services all under one roof. And so much what has been shared today just reemphasizes the importance of how the body keeps the score, and our emotional trauma manifests itself in the body physically. And so just thank you for sharing all of the things that most people probably don't even realize individuals deal with in this space. And I'd just like to share that it is encouraging. I found that I think there's more and more resources becoming available for neurodivergent individuals. And I can say, even at DeNova, we have groups. We have one for teens 13 to 17, and it about accepting yourself. And I know Vashti was kind of touching on that acceptance, and you're different, you're not different, but it's okay. And then we also have 3 adult groups plus 1 support group for parents who have neurodivergent children. So again, just like these wraparound supports that are available for the different ages and parents. We have a chronic pain one, which is full right now, but maybe that'll encourage us to add another group. And I can send these in an email to Lori so she can share with the group. And that way, as you're advocating for yourselves and your family members and the people that you meet with peer to peer, you can, share these resources. Another thing we're doing is adding a couple of psychiatrist providers that will be, let me find the email. So they're starting in next month, but we have 1 child psychiatrist and he'll be serving patients from birth to age 29, and then another adult psychiatrist who sees kids too, but he goes 11 and older, and he's also Spanish speaking, which I think is quite the niche, right? Because
Excellent,
there's
Jen.
probably a lot of that's probably the underserved community too, the Spanish speaking with neurodivergent. But
Thank you,
anyways,
Jen.
and I'll put
And
my info in the chat if anybody wants to connect one-on-one.
yeah, I was just going to ask you to do that. Thank you. So, Michelle?
I'm much like Libby shared. I came into mine late because it turns out it's a family tradition. And we were joking about the things that we used to say to each other when my kids were growing up, like, haha, your STD is showing, right? And then, come to find out that being adopted, I didn't have any family history for a very long time. But once I met folks, it was like, oh, I see it, right? And so what was so clear now wasn't very clear back then, but I really want to see some changes in the system in regards to support, right? So we have peer recovery support specialist credentialing that touches on substance use recovery and it touches on mental health, but it doesn't really touch on neurodivergence, right? And when we talk about nothing about us without us, there are very few folks that I've ever met as a peer leader, as a peer supervisor that actually had lived experience in this neurodivergent realm. And so, one of the things that I would like to see as a state that we do better is offer the peer support credentialing specialization or something to that effect for folks that are working with specific demographics so that it truly is nothing about us without us, right? So I feel like that's a place that we could really do better. So when you guys are advocating, I will keep ringing that bell, but I need your support to do that. Thank you.
Thank you,
I
Michelle.
will say, um, Brissa Rubiel, at Peer and Family Career Academy recently found, and she's working on getting me in on it. I haven't made it happen yet. The Drexel Institute is actually doing a autism peer support program. We don't have one specifically in Arizona yet, but I will let you all know how that one goes once it happens.
Thank you. Catherine, you have your hand up.
Yeah, this has been a really helpful panel. Like, thank you for putting it together. Thank you for, all the speakers for putting themselves out there. Um, it is nice to know that you're not alone, and it is nice to know that like there are resources out there that you didn't know about before. But I guess it's also depressing in some ways that so many of us have overlapping experiences. And I guess is there is there anyone specifically working on this at, say, like a regulatory level, or is everything just through behavioral health services?
I can't speak regarding the regulatory level, um, but I can share because I work for a health plan and we have a peer support curriculum. Um, and one of our main goals was going to be adding a lot of information on neurodiversity. And we are also finishing up a family support curriculum that we want to submit that will have extensive information on this population because 100% agree it's not out there right now. And truly, I really believe there is a lot more of us. I call myself neurospicy. There's a lot more of us out there than I think people understand. And again, it's not something wrong with us. Um, Sometimes it's a little bit of a superpower. So we need to acknowledge that. So.
Thank you. And Monty, thank you for putting in the chat reference for autism certification and trainings. Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments?
I
To
saw
my
Kat had
knowledge,
her hand up earlier. Do you have a question? Kat Polson, if you're still on the call.
I did, but I got emotional and I
Oh,
can't talk about
okay.
For sure, it's a very sensitive, and I've seen some people wiping tears. You're not the only one emotional here today. George, your hand is up.
It is, and this is not emotional, but rather advocacy, that Access has two policies regarding peer support and family support training. So they are what's called Access Medical Policy Manual, I believe, or AMPM number 963 and AMPM number 964. And I think I saw Chaz here, but they're open at various times. And I would suggest looking at these policies if you'd like to have a specialization for neurodivergent peer support specialists, neurodivergent family support specialists. So once again, thank you. Happy New Year, everybody. Um, Thank you, Lori.
Thank you, George. So I think that this has been a very deep and productive conversation. Something that didn't come up, but maybe those who are employers can take a look at how are you promoting the health and well-being of your staff members? Are you encouraging people to take a mental health day? Are you looking at what are the different organizations doing to support sustainability with so much turnover? We need to support our staff in ways that we can and make accommodations. Folks need to speak up if they need accommodation and needs to be met. There are legalities around all of that. Just to encourage the importance of self-care, which our panelists have identified that they push themselves too far, overachieving, people pleasing, masking, and it's so important to whatever you do for your self-care, recognize it, implement it, and the support of others. If there has been something here that triggered you after this meeting ends, make a phone call. If you see someone that you think could use a phone call, let's be connected with each other. So
also, we barely scratched the surface today talking about all of this. So I know I would be happy to do this again if
Me too.
and if anybody else is interested in potentially coming and sharing their experience more at the front, please reach out. As we have, there are so many times today where it's like, I can actually explain more about that, but we don't have time. I'm sure many of us were experiencing that. So,
thank you for bringing that up. I would love to do a deeper dive with you all on this. And we will keep in touch and take a look at calendars and see what we can do regarding that. For the sake of time, as we are closing in on this, I just want to thank our panelists and everyone who participated and was here today for sharing and being here. And